Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Representative Anna Eskamani is someone who I truly believe in. Whether she is leading a protest or advocating on the House floor, she is an inspiration. It was an honor to speak alongside Anna at a vigil for the victims of the Atlanta shooting. Part of Anna's speech that night has really resonated with me since. She said, "An ally supports a cause, but an accomplice shows up and helps fight." Anna is an accomplice. She is someone who I've seen on the front line of battles for critical issues. I am fortunate to have had a few conversations on the podcast with Anna, and today we were able to cover a myriad of topics in between her busy schedule. In this episode, Anna discusses COVID-19, Representative Matt Gaetz, gerrymandering in Florida, re-election, and the issues that lie ahead. Please support Anna's work and her campaign for re-election. 2022 may seem like a long way off, but it will be here before you know it, and the work starts now. Regardless of your politics, please listen with an open mind. Our voices matter, and representatives like Anna are there to listen. Finally, please help support this podcast by sharing and rating it. If you would like to support with a donation, you can become a patron of the show by visiting my website or patreon.com/sifumimichan. For comments or suggestions, email me at sifumimichan@gmail.com or reach out on social media at sifumimichan. Now on with the show. Hello, Representative Anna Eskamani. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me back.
Oh my goodness. Well, first, a public apology that I am unable to make your AAPI panel. I am devastated that I can't read anymore and scheduling has become a thing. But like you, not as busy as you, but it's just been crazy.
No, you do not have to apologize for anything. And I just want to say that we're super proud of all of your advocacy and your leadership, especially right now in this moment where we need you to feel empowered and to teach us how we can better support your community. And so I just want to say thank you for your
Oh my goodness.
work.
Well, that means so much coming from you. Well, I looked at the calendar and our last podcast chat was on February 28th of 2020. And I'm like, not much has happened since then.
Oh my God. What a pivotal moment, right? Because a few weeks after that is when Florida had the first COVID cases. And I actually remember you and I talking about the rise in anti-Asian American fervor, especially talking about even Chinese food restaurants were seeing an impact in their customer base because of the former president's comments. So it feels like ages ago, maybe, but at the same time, it's like we are still fighting some of these same battles, right? And I think that's very sad, but it also just speaks to our collective resilience to stay focused and to keep doing this work.
Absolutely. And I always thank you for that, not just your support, but your advocacy and you're just constantly, out there on the ground. I was telling my husband, Oscar, as I watched you over the pandemic, out there with your megaphone through all of the protests and all of the different events and unfortunate events that kept coming up. There was just so much. I mean, we obviously don't have enough time to unpack that here, but it's just been inspirational to just see you kind of attacking it. How do you feel the country, but Central Florida as a whole, because that's your love, that's where you're at. How do you feel like we've handled the pandemic? And it's like, are we finally seeing the light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I think at a local level, we have given it our all in trying to support one another, show up for one another. From a public health perspective, I think Orange County and Orlando has really paved the way in demonstrating just the type of science-based decision-making we have to make to keep folks safe. And candidly, there's been struggles. I mean, there have been so many moments of groups, crowding at bars and go back to normal life. And that's always frustrating to see because it also tends to be young people that maybe they're not at risk, but obviously they can impact their loved ones around them. Mm-hmm. But overall, when it comes to leading with science and really trying to understand that we can't have the economic recovery without the health problems being solved, right? And so I think that emphasis has been really good coming out of Central Florida. The state as a whole has been a challenge without a doubt. We've had a governor that has taken away a lot of local power making these decisions. And also a governor that just prefers to make everything political. And whether it was hydrochloroquine or it was mask wearing or it's the vaccine even, like things just always feel like they get political and they never need it to be. And that's super frustrating. And of course, from like the unemployment perspective, oh my goodness, like we have just been hustling nonstop. Even today, a year later, we still have folks that are waiting for weeks of benefits, months of benefits, folks who need back payment. And unfortunately, folks that are newly laid off because a business is, either reworking their infrastructure or has not been able to keep folks on as long as they wanted to. So those challenges have remained, and it's been a snowball effect where one problem becomes multiple problems. And in particular, already having an affordable housing crisis in our community, it was just worsened by the pandemic. So we're still dealing with those type of challenges as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've felt the frustration, just being a citizen, a constituent of Orlando, Florida, where it just felt like constant undermining by the governor, where, Mayor Demings is like, okay, let's wear masks and let's distance. And then it's just, we're getting just this influx of, counteracting what the local government is trying to do for us. And then,
right.
It's a constant battle, and it's an uphill battle. And I think with the vaccines, we're hoping there's the light at the end of the tunnel so people can go back to hanging out together and be in these public spaces. What would you say to, because you're a wonderful leader and people really seem to connect with you because you do actually go out into the public space. You're always allowing constituents to have one-on-one moments with you. And I've found that that's been the most effective way for people to really understand who are vaccine hesitant. And that's like a big thing that I've been trying to push for, is this vaccine hesitancy, because I really feel like we all need to come together to get that herd immunity. I had an amazing doctor on the show from the March of Dimes who, of course, did the science. But I mean, you have such a personal connection with so many people. Like, what can you say to maybe encourage and help those who are hesitant?
I love this question. And we've been really intentional in bringing the vaccine directly to community members, and also work with community leaders in combating the hesitancy. In particular, we've done vaccine events with our African American churches and the Paramore community. We did an Asian American focus event with a Vietnamese and Korean Catholic church in our community. And then most recently, we actually did an event with Joy Metropolitan Community Church focused on the Latinx community and the LGBTQ plus community, which was awesome because we know that for many folks that are in all these communities, they could also be at risk, but face language barriers or face transportation barriers. So we try really hard to also not only combat the hesitancy, but to bring the vaccine closer to people. And I think since then, the Biden administration has done a great job in more mobile vaccine locations, is trying to bring it to people's neighborhoods. To that point, to the heart of your question, I think we have to model it ourselves. And so I got my second shot about a week ago, so I'm almost fully vaccinated. And I think doing whatever we can to dispel myths is really important. So answer people's questions, right? When you're talking about the vaccine, don't just dismiss a person's hesitancy, because oftentimes it is grounded in maybe a cultural experience or just misinformation or lack of information. So I think the best advice I can offer is, when you're talking to loved ones, talking to friends who seem hesitant to consider the vaccine, ask why and just find out, because it might not be, caught up in conspiracy theories, as many of us probably assume. It really could be legitimate concern and questions that can easily be answered if you're willing to listen and help answer those questions.
Thank you for that. And I did want to say I was very excited to see your post on 2022 and your decision to keep fighting the fight, which I knew you would be. I just didn't know in what capacity, because this is you. And I know that you are there for us no matter what. But I know that the Florida has struggled with battles because of our minority in the Senate and the House. And SB 90 was crushing, and I'm something personally frustrated with. I had Patty Brigham from the League of Women Voters on, and we tried to campaign for that. But what are bigger challenges that lie ahead? And obviously, everyone just keep your sights on that and make sure you're voting for Ana.
Well, thank you, Mimi. And I have to say that it was an honor to make the decision to continue serving this district and this community. There's been a lot of folks who've asked me to run statewide, and candidly, though I'm so humbled by that, and I appreciate that. We need fighters in the Florida House, and when I measure just the options in front of me, my heart is very much in local politics. It's very much in what we can do at a neighborhood level. And I'm sure one day we'll make that leap to something statewide. But when you make that leap, you're sacrificing a lot of the local relationships in the sense that it's harder to be hands-on when you're at a different position. And the last thing I want is to also run for something like governor when I don't feel like my work here is done yet, right? When you have so many pieces incomplete, and how do you even focus on a statewide race? If you're a transactional person, maybe you can, but for me, it's like, that's tough. It's tough knowing that I have so many issues locally to still work on before I pitch myself, if you will, to a larger audience for something like governor. And so with that said, there's a lot of work to do. You mentioned just the voter suppression issues, which are spot on, because obviously a lot of this is systematic, right? The Republican majority is taking away the right to protest, the right to vote. Mm-hmm. They're attacking trans kids. They're making it harder for there to be citizen-led ballot initiatives. And so any type of policy where everyday people are given the opportunity to influence government or influence public opinion or to be themselves, that's what they're attempting to eliminate. So we should be very concerned. And a lot of this also bubbles up in the face of redistricting. And so for those who don't know, every 10 years, maps in Florida and across the country are redrawn. And this includes your U.S. congressional seats, your state house seats, and your state Senate seats, alongside local government districts as well. The U.S. Census data is what provides us with the numbers to do this. And that data will be available. It's actually running late, but it should be available in September. And so the legislature draws maps for ourselves, and we draw maps for the congressional seat, which is such a messed up process because it really should be a independent, party that does this. But we're drawing our own maps, which means there's going to be a lot of risk for gerrymandering and maps to be drawn to benefit one party over the other. Florida is getting an extra congressional seat due to our population growth. We don't know where that seat will be or what it will look like. So I really do encourage folks to not only vote, not only register to vote, but follow this next legislative session very closely, because it won't just be the state budget and policy, it will be the maps. It will be redistricting. You want to be engaged as much as possible to make sure your voice is heard. And Florida does have fair district amendments in our state constitution. But if you are a political nerd like I am, and you remember 10 years ago, maps were drawn with these fair district amendments, but they were still drawn to be gerrymandered. There was a lawsuit. The maps were redrawn for Congress and for the state Senate. But this time we have a completely new Supreme Court in Florida, very conservative. So there is concern that if a lawsuit happens this time, the results will not actually be in favor of what our what president has established. So got to be very, very mindful and just be like all hands on deck for this.
Yeah. And this is one of the biggest things I find frustrating, because someone fairly new in the last 5+ years of really trying to be more involved, most people just look towards that presidential election time period and pay attention to that. They're not really paying attention to the midterms. They're not paying attention to all these things that are just happening while we look at COVID news and numbers and get, or election news from the presidential. Like it seems that things go unnoticed, but these are things that actually affect our daily lives. And I don't know how to scream and shout at the top of my lungs for people to hear more about what's really affecting us is on the local level. I can't emphasize it enough, and I don't have enough listeners in Florida to just like get on board, but it must be more frustrating for you. I mean, you're actually fighting against it all the time, and it's just like rowing, but like feel like you're not going anywhere. Sometimes it must be really frustrating.
Well, and it brings up a question that I've asked myself a lot this past year. And it's like, how to be friends with people that are just so freaking different from you. And it's funny because it's one thing if we have a policy disagreement, right? But it feels like it's something else when, in my case, I have colleagues that it's not that we just disagree on policy, but they literally don't want my community to vote. They literally don't want us to protest. They do not support trans kids. And so it's so hard, right? Because you sit in this chamber and you're just like, and they put the Democrats in the back rows, we're the minority. And the row right in front of me are freshman Republicans, basically. So I have Democrats behind me, Republicans in front of me. And so you kind of see like the interactions and even during the fight to protect trans kids, we all thought this bill was dead, but they resurrected it. They attached it as an amendment to another bill. And so we were all asking some really good questions because they literally had just put together this new bill. The language made no sense. And so we were asking questions about birth certificates specifically. And long story short, the Republicans in front of me were Googling birth certificates as they're attacking trans kids because they couldn't answer the questions you were asking them. I mean, and so you kind of get this perspective, just you like, wow, like this is not about policy for you. This is about politics. And you're just on this, rampage to like appeal to a conservative base while ignoring the rest of the state and ignoring everyday people that you're impacting. And it's so hard to let go of that. Right. And so I often find myself having to like test my resilience, be kind to everyone, but also, remember what side of history you want to be on, and don't worry about other people's comfort in those situations. Like, I'm going to be kind to you, but I'm also going to point out the fact that this is a really bad bill and here's why. Right. And so I've been navigating that personally myself this past year too, because it's just, it challenges who you are as a human and what you care about. But at the same time, we need to be just as bold in our values and unapologetic in our values, like the opposition is, right? And that means not allowing them to destroy communities and then act like everything's fine. So like, we need to make sure they know that this isn't fine. We need to organize, we need to protest, we need to vote, we need to hold them accountable. And I'm committed to that long term and everything that I do, but we cannot keep going on this path of just kind of go along to get along, right? There's no reason to get along when you're attacking trans kids or attacking my right to vote.
Absolutely. And I think it's in the reverse as well. People are in the opposition, just opposing whatever it is, just because you seem to be on the quote unquote other side, like not even hearing the issue. Maybe it's something you would actually agree with, but if I say I'm a conservative, then no matter what the progressive side says, that it doesn't matter. Like, I think there's just like a shutdown of the willingness to listen and learn and have compassion and empathy. And I know that you probably are just done talking about it and you've heard it over and over, but you've gained a lot of notoriety as a result of sharing a voicemail from Matt Gaetz and Joel Greenberg. And I'm, I'm sorry that you have to endure this type of treatment in this day and age where you should be working in a respectful environment. And it's absolutely unacceptable. So thank you for sharing and empowering others. But what is even more despicable to me isn't just, of course, the actions of the voicemail and how you're treated and all of that. It's the acceptance of a lot of GOP leaders and other followers that feel like there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I don't even know what's worse, it's so frustrating. And so it reminds me, and this goes back to leadership, how our former president could get away with doing very unethical and immoral things. And it's just, now that's accepted. It's our standard as a community, as a society, I feel has just really, the bar is just lowering, which is really sad.
Totally. That's so well said. That is so well said. It's one thing to have that experience, but then to not only share your experiences, but of course, in the case of Congressman Matt Gaetz and the former tax collector Joel Greenberg, it's even worse, right, than what I experienced. I mean, we're talking about just incredibly inappropriate behavior, exploiting their positions of authority and power, corruption, greed. And of course, one of the worst outcomes of this is the fact that a 17-year-old was essentially raped in this situation because a 17-year-old cannot consent to sexual behavior with those that are older than her. In this case, that's what it was. And so the fact that for many of us, this is normal. Like, it's just branded as boys will be boys, right? And we don't even question how this behavior is wrong. But then to share your experiences and to either receive silence or, if anything, excuses, is a lot worse. And I'll tell you, for that voicemail that I had that I shared, and for those who don't know, I got a phone call from Joel Greenberg back on, I think it was July 5th of 2019. And, I screened my calls. And so when I saw it, I was like, I'm not picking up. There's no reason for you to be calling me. Like, it's a weekend, it's a holiday weekend. There's no reason for me to pick up my phone right now, especially when it's him. So I let it go to voicemail, and the voicemail was him and Matt Gaetz. And it was very flirtatious. It was very trying to get my attention and trying to flatter me, compliment me. It was super weird. And I literally sat on this voicemail for years. Like, I played it for my sister, I played it for some of my friends, just like, can you believe this? Right. But I didn't do anything else because I just accepted it as another day of being a woman in this world. And that's not okay. Like, I shouldn't accept that as reality either. And so when all the news about Matt Gaetz started erupting, I felt compelled to come out with that voicemail and share it. But the fact every Republican leader in the Florida legislature has said nothing is ridiculous. But again, it's like this bro culture, they're protecting one another. And meanwhile, power is exploited and we are objectified and continue to have to operate in this place of walking on eggshells. And if I challenge a powerful man who is making me feel uncomfortable, then that can impact my political career, it can impact what bills I get heard, it can impact money spent against me, my next campaign. Like, I already know, Mimi, that sharing my experience and calling for the resignation of Matt Gaetz is going to impact me in my next campaign. 100%. They're going to put money against me. I mean, they're going to do everything they can to punish me for doing that. And that's not right. But at the same time, like, I am accepting that because I want more people to share their stories and not be afraid to share their stories. But yeah, it's super gross. And he needs to resign. And I'm just waiting for more news to break about this because, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Like, it's going to get worse.
Absolutely.
But it speaks to so many of our experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, thank you for sharing and being, helping empower others. It is very brave and it is very selfless. And like you said, there's impacts, but it's all of us trying to stand together and support one another. So I absolutely, I'm very proud to know you, and I'm very proud that you serve this community, and it's amazing. So I know you got to run. So my last question, of course, is, I know that you've made the decision, you're going to fight the fight here and stay local, but seeing our vice president, Kamala Harris, get sworn in brought tears to my eyes. Like, I felt represented in so many different ways at that moment. And I know you've already accomplished so much in your career, but I want to know kind of what that was like for you. And does it alter the way you see your career and where you could be and what you want to do? Because even for someone that's accomplished what you have, there still is that the voicemail we just talked about. There's things that's constantly, oppressive. And so did that moment, let's end on a happy note, that moment, how did that impact you?
Oh my goodness. It's such a sweet question. I actually have a volunteer whose mom has made me a lot of different face masks with like some very fun fabrics, including RBG and Vice President Harris. So I have a face mask. I have two actually that are of our vice president. And one of them is just her face. It's like a drawing of her face, and it says like Madam Vice President on it. It's a really cute mask. Every time I wear it, people ask me, "Oh, who's that on your mask? Is that you?" And I'm like, "Oh no, it's the vice president." But the fact that they think like this brown person of color, like on my mask, that it's me, is actually kind of cool, because when has there ever been a moment where I have been mistaken for a drawing of the vice president? Like, it's a big deal, right? Like, because she is a person of color. Like, and so it opens up this world of opportunity to say, oh my God, like, yes, any one of us can now be in this position of authority and this position of decision making and a position of power. And so it is remarkable. And yes, I mean, watching her be sworn in has been incredible. And it does give me a lot of hope for the future. And honestly, I was kind of mad sometimes. I felt like we couldn't even celebrate as much, whether it's because of the pandemic or just the fact that we have so much to recover from. Mm-hmm. It wasn't even like, I feel like it didn't even take up as much space as it should have. And so every day, like, I'm very, very proud of that. And I think that it absolutely is a glass ceiling, but that is broken, and it's created a lot of cracks in other glass ceilings that we have to just keep working at so that we can have an equitable community and society that truly represents all of us.
Excellent. Well, onward with Anna, of course, as always. But last thing is, how can we do more to help? What do you suggest? And we'll link all of that here, and then I'll let you go on with your day.
I love it. Well, thank you again for having me. This was such a good morale booster for me. Like, so many long days, but so many ways to get involved. I would encourage folks to follow us online. So you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And that's at Anna for Florida, all spelled out with 2 N's, at Anna for Florida. And then our website is the same thing, annaforflorida.com. And you can see ways to take action with us. We have volunteer opportunities. So please check us out online, make a donation, sign a petition, get us back on the ballot. But lots of things to do. And we are your connection to advocacy. So don't be shy to reach out.
Excellent. And she is always accessible, everybody. So please do reach out to her. Anna, thank you so much as always. I know your time is very valuable, so I appreciate you spending a little bit of it with me today.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.